Today, we're going to talk about one of the most powerful skills you can have in any career: how to turn your great ideas into something real. So, picture this. You've got it, that brilliant, game changing idea. The one you're absolutely convinced could make a huge difference for your team, your product, maybe your whole company. And yet, nothing. It's just stuck. You present all the data, you walk through the logic, but you just can't seem to get people excited. You can't get the buy-in, the funding, the green light. It's an incredibly common and, let's be honest, super frustrating place to be. The data is absolutely crucial. It gives you credibility for sure. But if you really want to move people, if you want your idea to be remembered and to actually inspire action, you need a story. So that brings us to our first big idea: the massive difference between just sharing information and actually having influence. And as you're about to see, they are two completely different things. Now, when we say storytelling, we're not talking about gathering around a campfire. Think of it as a core leadership skill. It's the craft of taking your work, your data, your strategy, and shaping it into a narrative that truly influences people. And why is this so important? Well, because stories are what get entire teams aligned and rowing in the same direction. They're what convince the execs to write the checks for your projects. Stories get customers excited. And maybe most importantly, they turn cold, hard data into something that makes people want to get up and do something. Okay, so how do we do it? Let's start with our first framework. This is a little secret that top executives and consultants use all the time to make sure their message lands with total clarity and impact every single time. It's called the pyramid principle. It's simple, it's powerful, and trust me, once you get it, you'll start seeing it everywhere. So here's where we kind of flip our usual way of thinking on its head. Instead of building up to a big conclusion, you start with it. You lead with your single most important message. That's your headline. Then you give the key supporting points. And only after that do you get into the nitty-gritty details. It's answer first, then explain. It's so powerful because it respects everyone's time and just gets right to the point. And actually, take a look at what we're doing right now. We started with the big idea that storytelling drives influence. And now we're breaking down all the pieces. Yep, that's the pyramid principle live in action. Okay, so we've got our logical structure down. Now let's build the emotional structure on top of that, the narrative. Let's walk through the classic 5-part story arc that makes any message really stick. You start by setting the scene. Let's say there's a struggling small business owner. Then you introduce a conflict. They're just drowning in paperwork. And boom, your idea or your product shows up as the hero, the solution. Maybe it's an app that automates everything. You back it up with proof, and then you paint this vivid picture of the much better future your idea creates. You're literally taking your audience on a journey. Now, having a great structure and a great story is one thing, but the best communicators on the planet know a story is only powerful if it actually connects with the listener. And that means you have to know your audience. This table just lays it out perfectly. If you're talking to executives, you're going to focus on the business impact, the ROI, the risk. With engineers, it's all about clarity, logic, technical trade-offs. And with designers, you lean into the empathy, the emotion, the actual user experience. The core story doesn't change, but the lens you use to tell it absolutely does. So here's the key thing to remember. You're not changing your facts. You're not changing your core message. You are simply adjusting what you emphasize and the language you use to connect with what that specific audience cares about most. It's about flexing your delivery, not your truth. All right, we've got the structure, we've got the strategy. Now for the toolkit. A few really practical models you can start using pretty much immediately to bring all this to life. Remember how we said data makes you credible? Well, how do you make data memorable? You tell a story with it. Let's walk through a super simple 3-step model. It all starts with a fact. You see a number on a dashboard, something like plus 20%. Okay, on its own, that's just information. It has no context. Our retention went up 20%. The next step is insight. This is where you add the meaning. Why did this happen? What is this number actually telling us? So in this case, the insight is, this means our users are finding the real value in our product way faster. And finally, the most important part, action. So what? Because of this fact and this insight, what should we do next? The action is, we're going to take this learning and apply it to our new user onboarding process. You see that? Fact, insight, action. That's the data story. And as you start to tell these stories, just remember this powerful idea. Real confidence, real executive presence, it doesn't come from being the loudest person in the room. It comes from the clarity that these kinds of frameworks give you. When you know your point, your structure, and your story, that confidence it comes naturally. And really, this is the big transformation we're talking about. Mastering these skills is what elevates you from someone who just builds things to someone who truly leads people, projects, and strategy. So let's wrap with your key takeaways. Number 1, always start with your main point first. That's the pyramid principle. 2, take your audience on a real journey using that 5-part story arc. 3, turn your data into meaning with the fact, insight, action model. And finally, always adapt your story for your audience, but never change your core message. And that leaves us with one final question. When you look at your work, your ideas, your goals right now, what is the one most important story that you need to tell next?